I'm so over swatches. Like after this experience, I don't care what a swatch looks like, how bad it is, how good it is. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Faith. Thank you so much for being here. If as you watch you like what you see, I would love it if you'd hit that subscribe button. It's just that red button. It's totally free. You just hit it and then you're following me. And then if you'd like to as well, hit that notification bell. That way you're notified when I upload. This video is something completely different than what I thought I was going to be filming. So I actually just wrapped up filming 4 looks, 1 eye look for each palette in the Vault collection. That video will be going up next on my channel, and you can kind of see 2 of the looks that I did here. That's why I have 2 different colors going on my eyes right now. Before I filmed that video, I went through and swatched every single shade in these 4 palettes. I did finger swatches as well as brush swatches. If you don't know, which you probably do, but if you didn't know, this collection with Jaclyn Hill and Morphe was supposed to launch like a month or 2 ago, and they actually delayed the launch due to batch inconsistencies. They had sent a few of these out in PR, and a lot of people noticed that these shadows were really, really bad. Like they just were not performing well. So Morphe and Jaclyn pulled it back, and they had a later release date. So these are supposed to be the good palettes, like the good formula. It even says V2 for volume 2 on the back of these, but I thought they like fooled us, or like, I don't know, I thought that I had maybe the original collection, or that even this new collection is just terrible, because as you'll see, I'm going to be inserting some clips of some of the brush swatches. As you'll see, they swatch terribly, and I swatched them like how a normal person would swatch them. I know a lot of times for marketing, people will really swatch things like super nicely and like over and over and over again to really get that pigmentation and make it look nice. But I wanted to just take a few swipes with a brush, swatch it, and really show you guys what it would look like, so that you could really see like, what am I getting? This is a real swatch, right? It's not like a swatch that's been worked on for like 5 minutes making it look perfect. But I just have to say, I'm so over swatches. Like after this experience, I don't care what a swatch looks like, how bad it is, how good it is. At this point in my makeup journey, this is what I believe. It has nothing to do with how it's going to perform on the eyes. So I kind of gave away like my final feelings on this, but basically these swatched terribly. I'm going to take you through each of the palettes so you can kind of see how terribly they swatched. First up is Dark Magic. This is the green palette, and you will just see, I have notes here because it was that bad. I was like, I'm so overwhelmed. I don't even know where to start with this. Poof wasn't bad. That was the first shade. Power Cut, this metallic silver, was terrible. It did not work with a brush at all. Shh is this matte dusty taupe. This was okay in the swatch. Trickery was this sparkling emerald. The sparkles did not pick up at all in the brush swatch. Like it looked like a matte, so that was not good. Diversion is this like gunmetal shade. This was terrible with a brush. It didn't pick it up at all. And then Potion is this matte avocado green. Not good pigment at all in the brush swatch. Busted is this matte blue. This was super weird. It showed up super light and streaky and patchy. Then there's Inside Job. This is a matte, very deep blue-green. This was super powdery. It reminded me of Subculture right away. Like I was like, oh boy, we have another Subculture on our hands. Then we have Mojo. This is a matte smoked hickory, it's described as. This wasn't bad. You just really need to blend it. And then we had a black shade, which actually, even in the brush swatch, this wasn't bad. This is called Temptress, and this is a nice black shade. It's swatched nicely. But yeah, that's the first one there. The look that I created with this palette was before these two, so you're not going to get to see what that looks like. I, again, will be uploading that video with all 4 looks, so you can kind of see. But that look turned out fine. Like, I wouldn't say this was the easiest palette to work with, and I think I even say in the video that's going to be going up next that I still prefer the Jaclyn Hill Original Full Palette, this guy right here. I still prefer the formulas for most of the shades in here, especially to this one. Some of the mattes, like for instance, that Inside Job shade is a little bit tricky, but all in all, the shades blended super nicely and these shimmers worked fine. So I was so relieved when I first did that eye look because I legitimately thought that it was going to come out terribly. So that was the first one. Then we had Ring the Alarm, and this is the warm palette. So the one that I'm assuming most people are interested in just because it's a warm palette, and if you're a fan of Jaclyn, you're probably a fan of warm shadows. And this time I even switched brushes. So when I did the first palette, the Dark Magic palette, I was using a shader brush that I've used before and liked fine, but I just switched brushes at this point and used a Morphe brush because I was like, maybe it's the brush. Like, I don't know, it's terrible. And I don't even like Morphe brushes, but I was like, maybe a Morphe brush with Morphe shadows would work better, but it really didn't. So the first one swatched was Lolli. This is a shimmering peachy shade. It did not work well at all with a brush. Then was Rush. This was a matte kind of pukey color. This actually was fine. This I thought would be a nice transition shade. But then there was On Camera. This did not work at all with a brush on my arm. Like, it was terrible. Then there was Boom. This is another shimmer shade. This actually worked pretty well, but it's even more gorgeous with the finger. Like, and I know I'm saying swatches don't matter, but like, these shimmers just aren't meant to be used with brushes for the most part. But the thing was, even the mattes were like swatching terribly. Like, I don't know, it was just bad. Then there was Alert, which is a matte sort of orange. This had a ton of pigment. This one again kind of reminded me of Subculture, like a ton of pigment that just poofs everywhere. Then there was Bomb Ass, which actually is the bright pink shade that you see on this eye right here. This was actually pretty good. I thought that this was going to be a little more shimmery, and it wasn't, but it actually swatched fine. Then Siren, this had a lot of pigment. There was a ton of fallout. Then there was Mugshot. This didn't have much pigment at all, but still had a lot of fallout. Then there was Framed. Again, not much pigment at all, but still a lot of fallout. Then there was Secret, which had a decent amount of pigment, but a lot of fallout. So I was just like, is this gonna be a mess using on the eyes? Like, I was so overwhelmed. I was so disappointed. And I don't know. I had never experienced something swatching so terribly. And I do swatch things a lot. Like, it's not like I'm a beginner to swatching. I know how to swatch things, but for me, these just were not swatching. Oh, hello, Kip. For me, these were just not swatching well. And I know that Jaclyn did a whole video swatching every shade, and hers looked good. So that's kind of where my thought process was going of like, did I get the wrong set of palettes? Like, what is happening here? Now, also, I think she finger swatched everything and I was brush swatching at this point. So that does make a big difference when you brush swatch, and I was always under the assumption that brush swatches would give you more of an indication of how they would actually work on the eyes, but yeah, anyways. Okay, on to the next palette. Then we have the Bling Boss palette. This is the purple palette, and this is where I started to do finger swatches, which definitely made things better. I kind of always felt like finger swatches are kind of like a cop-out. Like, of course it's gonna look good with a finger swatch. Like, your finger is warm and it's smooth, but like, what does a brush swatch do? So I've just always thought that brush swatches are better, but anyways, I digress. Let's move into this. The first shade in the Bling Boss palette is Bling Bling. This was so chunky, you guys. Like, you can even still kind of see it here. And I will say, this is not how the shimmers are in the original Jaclyn Hill Big palette. I prefer the shimmers in this palette, especially when set against the Bling Boss palette. This was chunky. I mean, it still looks good, on the eyes. I actually have this in the inner corner of this side, but yeah. Then there's Hush Hush. This is a matte lilac mauve shade. I actually liked how this swatched even with the brush. I was very impressed. And then there's Gem, and that's the bright purple that you see on my lid. This I would have thought would have been more shimmery, kind of like how I thought that the bright pink would have been more shimmery, but it did have good pigmentation once I used my finger. Then there was Pizzazz. This was good when it was finger swatched. Then there was Mystic. This just had bad pigmentation in my opinion. Then there's Spark. This is a matte red. This was just bad with the brush. Then Glitz and Glam, which I actually have right in this area. This was another super chunky shade. Then there was Rockstar. This good pigmentation. It felt okay, but I will say I used this shade in my crease and it was difficult to work with. Then there was Ballsy, again, very chunky, very chunky, not a huge fan. And then there was Berry Treasure, which I love the name of that because it's spelled B-E-R-R-Y. This is a glittering black, like a black with purple glitter in it. I hate blacks with glitter in it. Like, I just don't like it. Like, I don't know, I just don't like blacks with glitter, so I won't be using that shade at all. Now that you've seen both brush swatches and finger swatches, I think you can see what I mean when I say, first of all, just beware brush swatches. Second of all, even some finger swatches, like especially the mattes, didn't necessarily mean that the shadow was going to be good. Like again, I will go back to Rockstar. Of all the mattes, that actually swatched the best, but I would say this was the most difficult to work with on the eye. And some of these shadows that didn't swatch that well actually were good on the eyes. So again, I'm over swatches. The last palette we have here is the Armed and Gorgeous palette, and this is the yellow-orange palette with a little hint of green in it. So the first one we have here is VIP. This was not great with a brush, but it was really beautiful with the finger. I love this shade. This is the other palette that you're not seeing here. It was a look I did before these two. Then we have Access. This is a matte yellow and very nice matte when swatched. But actually, when I put this on the eye, it was a little powdery and like poofy. So again, interesting that in the swatch, this had a lot of pigment, but then when I went to go use it, it wasn't like the best. Then we have Guilt Trip. This was not bad with the brush, but it had pretty good pigment with the fingers. Again, this shimmer shade was pretty chunky, so I didn't love that. I totally forgot to swatch coin in my swatches, so let me just do that now for you. That's it with the finger. It's kind of like a green gold. Then there is Agent, which I don't know why you have Agent and this shade here, Secure. They're so similar. Like, why wouldn't you do a different shade? I don't know. So here's Agent. Then there was Top Secret. This had very nice pigment. There was a lot of fallout in these brush swatches, but when I ended up using this, it actually did work very nicely. Then there was Smooth Criminal. Lots of fallout. Then there's Secure. This, as I mentioned, looks just like Agent. I don't really know why there's both of these in here, but yeah, anyways. Then there was Prowl. This had very bad pigmentation in the brush, but actually, I don't know, I think I used this in my outer corner and it was totally fine. It had great pigment. So, and then Classified. This was terrible with the brush, like terrible. And then you will see the finger swatch. I think of all the shimmers, this one reminds me of the original Jaclyn Hill Morphe shimmers the most. Like, this was intense. And I ended up using this on my lid in the look I did with this palette. So basically just what I wanted to come on here and say is, don't judge a palette until you've actually tried it on your eyes, because I was not really looking forward to filming these eye looks because of the brush swatches and even some of the finger swatches that I was doing. I already had it predetermined in my mind that these were going to be bad because the swatches, especially with the brush, which I had not seen before. Jaclyn didn't do brush swatches from what I remember. I only remember seeing finger swatches. The swatches that I did with brushes were terrible. And I have, again, I feel like I've said this 3 or 4 times now, but I've always been under the assumption that brush swatches will show you the true picture of what a shadow will do. So I was very disappointed and really thought that I had gotten a bad batch. But then when I went in to do the 4 looks, 2 of which you're seeing here, it was not the case at all. Do I think that they're as good, or not even as good, but as easy to work with as the original Jaclyn Hill palette? No. But are they a piece of trash? Definitely not. So I just wanted to put this video out there and really just warn you guys that sometimes swatches and even just dipping your brush into a shade and seeing fallout doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to apply badly on the eyes. I've never really done an emergency type review video where I'm kind of all over the place and really just confused, so I'm sorry for that, but I hope that this was helpful for you and maybe it just clears up any confusion you might have of seeing swatches, but then some people saying one thing and then the other. I don't know. Hopefully this was helpful in some way. If it was, make sure you give this video a thumbs up. That really helps me. And if you like me, then definitely subscribe to my channel by hitting that red subscribe button. It's totally free. It's not like a magazine subscription or anything like that. It's just basically saying that you're following me, and then you can hit that notification bell to be notified when I upload. And if you want to see how I achieved these 2 eye looks as well as 2 more using the other 2 Vault Collection palettes, then keep an eye out for that. That will be the next video up on my channel. I love you all so much, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!